The Quran, the holy book of Islam, is a profound source of guidance for over 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. Its verses, revealed over a span of 23 years, have been meticulously preserved and revered by generations. The Quran is not just a religious text, it is a living document that continues to inspire and guide the lives of Muslims across the globe. Its message has resonated through centuries, offering spiritual direction and moral clarity. From the deserts of Arabia to the bustling cities of the modern world, the Quran's teachings have transcended time and space, influencing countless aspects of life, culture and civilization. Yet, the very structure of this sacred text has been a subject of ongoing debate and scholarly inquiry. Scholars from various disciplines have dedicated their lives to understanding the intricate design of the Quran, seeking to uncover the wisdom behind its unique composition. Unlike linear narratives, the Quran's arrangement can appear complex, its verses flowing seamlessly between themes of faith, law, history, and morality. This non-linear structure challenges readers to engage deeply with the text, encouraging reflection and contemplation. This intricate tapestry of revelation has captivated scholars, prompting them to seek deeper meaning in the arrangement of its verses and chapters, known as surahs. Each surah, with its unique themes and messages, contributes to the overall coherence of the Quran, creating a harmonious blend of divine guidance. The question of the Quran's structure is not merely an academic exercise. It is a profound exploration into the heart of the divine message, seeking to understand the wisdom and purpose behind its composition. It lies at the heart of understanding the divine message itself. The arrangement of the Quran's verses and surahs is believed to hold deeper meanings, guiding believers in their spiritual journey and offering insights into the nature of divine revelation. Believers and scholars alike have grappled with the relationship between the order of revelation, the arrangement of verses within surahs, and the sequence of the surahs themselves. This intricate relationship is seen as a key to unlocking the deeper layers of meaning within the Quran. This exploration delves into the historical evolution of interpretations regarding the Quran's structure, shedding light on the methods employed and the significance of these findings for both scholarly and everyday understanding of the divine text. Over the centuries, various schools of thought have emerged, each offering unique perspectives on the Quran's composition. The quest to understand the Quran's structure is a testament to the enduring power of its message. It reflects the deep-seated desire of scholars and believers to unlock the layers of meaning embedded within its verses, seeking to connect more profoundly with the divine. It reflects a deep-seated desire to unlock the layers of meaning embedded within its verses. This pursuit is not just about academic curiosity. It is about connecting with the divine on a deeper level, understanding the wisdom and guidance that the Quran offers. By tracing the historical trajectory of this pursuit, we gain a richer appreciation for the complexities of the Quran and the multifaceted approaches employed to decipher its divine architecture. This journey through history reveals the dedication and passion of those who have sought to understand the Quran, offering us valuable insights into its timeless message and the profound impact it continues to have on the world. From the earliest days of Islam, scholars and commentators have recognized a profound coherence within the Quran. This coherence is not merely a superficial arrangement of verses, but a deep, intricate structure that binds the text together in a meaningful way. These early thinkers, often referred to as the partisans of coherence, believed that the arrangement of verses and surahs was deliberate and meaningful. They posited that every verse, every word, and every letter had its place and purpose within the grand design of the Quran. They sought to uncover the intricate web of connections that held the text together, convinced that understanding the Quran's structure was essential to grasping its message in its entirety. This pursuit was not just an academic exercise, but a spiritual journey to uncover the divine wisdom embedded in the text. One of the primary methods employed by these scholars was concatenation, an Arabic term that refers to the linking together of verses and passages based on shared themes, vocabulary, or rhetorical style. This method allowed them to see the Quran not as a collection of disjointed revelations, but as a cohesive, unified discourse. By meticulously tracing these connections, they aim to demonstrate the inherent unity of the Quranic discourse. They believed that by understanding these links, one could gain a deeper appreciation of the divine message and its timeless relevance. These early scholars meticulously analyzed the text, identifying recurring motifs, parallel passages, and subtle linguistic echoes that bound different sections together. They would spend years, sometimes even decades, studying the text, cross-referencing verses and compiling their findings into comprehensive commentaries. Their work laid the foundation for centuries of scholarship on the Quran's structure. Later, scholars built upon their findings, further refining the methods and uncovering even more intricate connections within the text. They approached the text with reverence and a deep conviction that its arrangement was divinely inspired. This reverence was not just for the content of the Quran, but for its form as well, believing that the structure itself was a testament to its divine origin. Their efforts provided a framework for understanding the coherence of the Quran, paving the way for future generations to delve deeper into its intricate tapestry. This framework has allowed modern scholars to continue exploring the depths of the Quran, revealing new insights and understandings that resonate with contemporary audiences. The legacy of these early scholars is a testament to the enduring power of the Quran and its ability to inspire and guide humanity through the ages. While the partisans of coherence made significant strides in elucidating the Quran's structure, their views were not universally accepted. The intellectual landscape of the classical era was rich and diverse, with scholars engaging in rigorous debates and discussions. Even within the classical period, dissenting voices emerged, questioning the notion of a deliberate and discernible structure within the text. These voices were not merely contrarian, but were rooted in deep scholarly inquiry and a desire to understand the divine text in all its complexity. These skeptics, while acknowledging the eloquence and spiritual depth of the Quran, argued that its arrangement might be more fluid and less rigidly defined than their counterparts proposed. They posited that the beauty of the Quran lay in its ability to convey profound truths through a seemingly organic and dynamic structure. Some skeptics pointed to the historical context of the Quran's revelation, which spanned over 2 decades. This extended period saw the Prophet Muhammad receiving revelations in response to various events and circumstances, which, they argued, could naturally lead to a more fragmented structure. They argued that the piecemeal nature of its descent could explain the perceived lack of a clear, overarching structure. Each revelation was a response to specific needs and situations, making the text a living document that evolved with the early Muslim community. Others suggested that the arrangement of verses and surahs might have been influenced by practical considerations, such as the length of revelations or the need to address specific events or concerns of the early Muslim community. This pragmatic approach to the text's compilation was seen as a way to make the divine message accessible and relevant to its immediate audience. These dissenting opinions, though challenging the prevailing view, enriched the discourse surrounding the Quran's structure. They brought to light the multifaceted nature of the text and encouraged scholars to consider a wider range of interpretative possibilities. They encouraged a more critical examination of the text and its historical context, prompting scholars to refine their methods and seek more nuanced understandings of the relationship between revelation, compilation, and arrangement. This critical approach fostered a deeper appreciation for the Quran's complexity and the historical processes that shaped its final form. The debates between the partisans of coherence and the skeptics were not just academic exercises. They were part of a broader effort to engage with the Quran in a meaningful way. These discussions reflected the dynamic and evolving nature of Islamic scholarship, where differing perspectives were valued and explored. Ultimately, the skepticism of the classical era played a crucial role in shaping the field of Quranic studies. It pushed scholars to look beyond surface-level interpretations and to delve into the deeper, more intricate aspects of the text. This legacy of critical inquiry continues to influence contemporary scholarship, reminding us of the importance of questioning and re-examining our understanding of sacred texts. In conclusion, the skepticism in the classical era was not a sign of doubt, but a testament to the vibrant intellectual tradition within Islam. It highlighted the richness of the Qur'an and the diverse ways in which it could be understood and appreciated. This period of critical engagement laid the groundwork for future generations of scholars to continue exploring the depths of the Quranic text. Historical context, early inquiry. The structure of the Qur'an has been a topic of interest since at least the 9th century, with scholars like Al-Jahiz discussing the composition of the Qur'an. Classical debate, the debate about the Qur'an's unity versus disjointedness, was evident in the works of scholars like Abu Bakr al-Nisaburi, who questioned the rationale behind the placement of verses and chapters. Methods of analysis. Partisans of coherence. These scholars, including al-Razi and al-Qutubi, emphasize the interconnection of verses through successive verse, relationships within chapters, correspondences between the last and first verses of chapters, connections between the end of one chapter and the beginning of the next. Linear atomistic approach. This method focuses on individual verses rather than thematic units of chapters, which has been critiqued as narrow but also defended as a valid approach within its historical context. Counter-arguments, skeptics. Critics like Ibn Abd al-Salam argued that the Qur'an, revealed over 20+ years for various reasons, couldn't be treated as a single, unified text due to its diverse contexts of revelation. Cultural and linguistic perception, Muslim recitation. For many Muslims, the Qur'an's aesthetic and spiritual perfection is evident through recitation, making structural debates somewhat academic. Western criticism. Western scholars like Voltaire, Carlyle, and others have often described the Qur'an as lacking in literary coherence or beauty, focusing on its arrangement rather than its spiritual or lyrical qualities. Modern approaches, holistic interpretations. Modern scholars such as Abd al-Hamid al-Farahi and Amin Islahi have moved towards analyzing chapters as thematic wholes, highlighting unity through symmetry, parallelism, chiasm, and concentrism. Symmetry and structure. Mikhail Kuipers and others have shown that the Qur'an's structure often follows symmetrical patterns, suggesting a deliberate design to its composition. Structural principles. Symmetry. The Qur'an employs symmetry in forms like parallelism, chiasm, and concentrism, with concentrism being particularly prevalent. Ring, composition. Drawing from Mary Douglas, this structure emphasizes a central theme or message, with the beginning and end of texts echoing each other to complete a thematic circle. Objectives of your study. Refuting disjointedness. To counter the long-held view of the Qur'an as disorganized. Enhancing interpretation. To show how understanding the structure can lead to a deeper interpretation of the Qur'an's meanings. Your introduction sets up a compelling case for revisiting the Qur'an's structure, not just as a theological or linguistic exercise, but as a literary study that can enrich both scholarship and spiritual understanding. The use of different typographical styles to denote structural relationships in diagrams is an innovative approach to visually conveying these complex interconnections. Moderator, good evening, everyone. Tonight, we delve into the centuries-old debate about the structural coherence of the Qur'an. On one side, we have Dr. Hassan Alami, representing the partisans of coherence, who argue for the Qur'an's structural unity. On the other side, we have Professor Jane Smith, who will present the skeptical view regarding the Qur'an's organization. Let's begin with opening statements. Dr. Hassan Alami, partisans of coherence. Thank you, moderator. The Qur'an's structure is not only coherent but divinely inspired. From the 9th century, scholars like Al-Jahiz and al-Nisaburi have sought to understand why verses are placed as they are. Our method involves showing how each verse relates to the next, how chapters connect, and how the whole text forms a harmonious unit. Symmetry, parallelism, and concentric patterns in the Qur'an demonstrate a deliberate and profound structure. Professor Jane Smith, skeptic. Thank you. I respect the historical efforts to find coherence, but I contend that the Qur'an was revealed piecemeal over 23 years for diverse reasons, making it inherently less of a unified text. The attempts to link verses and chapters often seem forced, requiring tenuous connections. The Qur'an, as we have it, reflects a collection of revelations without a clear, overarching literary sensibility. Moderator, an interesting contrast. Dr. Alami, how do you respond to the argument that the Qur'an's structure reflects its piecemeal revelation? Dr. Hassan. Alami, the revelation's gradual nature does not negate its structural integrity. In fact, the symmetry and ring compositions, as explored by modern scholars like Mikkel Kuipers, show how newer revelations fit into this pre-existing framework, enhancing rather than disrupting the text's unity. Each part of the Qur'an was placed where it is for a reason, often reflecting thematic or moral continuity. Moderator, Professor Smith, your thoughts on the use of symmetry and concentric patterns to argue for coherence? Professor Jane Smith, while symmetry can be found in many texts, attributing it to divine intent in the Qur'an might be overreaching. The patterns some see could be more a product of human interpretation than inherent design. The very need to rearrange the text by Western scholars like Rodwell or Bell suggests there's an acknowledged lack of natural flow in the existing order. Moderator, Dr. Alami, how do you counter the critique that Western scholars find the Qur'an disjointed? Dr. Hassan Alami. With respect, these criticisms often come from a cultural and linguistic disconnect. The Qur'an is not just a text to be read, but to be experienced through recitation. Its beauty and structure are most evident in Arabic, where the language's rhythm and rhyme support its thematic unity. Also, modern scholarship, both Eastern and Western, has increasingly recognized these patterns. Moderator, Professor Smith, does the aesthetic and spiritual experience of the Qur'an for Muslims factor into your analysis? Professor Jane Smith. Certainly the spiritual experience is profound, but that doesn't necessarily translate to structural coherence from a purely literary standpoint. The beauty of recitation might mask what some see as a lack of clear narrative or thematic progression. However, I acknowledge that for many, this experience is the essence of the Qur'an's perfection. Moderator, we're nearing the end of our debate. Final thoughts from each of you? Dr. Hassan Alami. The Qur'an's structure is a testament to its divine origin, where every verse and chapter interlocks in a pattern that reveals more upon study. This structure aids in the interpretation and spiritual elevation of its readers. Professor Jane Smith, while the Qur'an holds immense spiritual value, its structural coherence remains debatable. The text's beauty lies more in its linguistic and religious depth than in a structured narrative or thematic consistency. Moderator, thank you both for a thought-provoking discussion. This debate underscores the complexity of analyzing religious texts through both faith-based and scholarly lenses. Let's delve a bit deeper into how these interpretations affect the understanding of the Qur'an. Dr. Alami, how does recognizing the Qur'an's structural coherence influence its interpretation? Dr. Hassan Alami. Understanding the structural coherence of the Qur'an provides a framework for interpretation. For instance, the use of concentric structures or chiasms directs attention to central themes or messages. Recognizing these patterns helps us appreciate the layers of meaning in the text, where each part complements and deepens the understanding of others. This approach also aligns with the traditional Islamic view of the Qur'an as a unified message from God. Moderator, and Professor Smith, how do you view the impact of the structural debate on the interpretation of the Qur'an? Professor Jane Smith, I believe that focusing too much on structure can sometimes distract from the actual content of the verses. If we're constantly trying to fit each verse into a preconceived structural mold, we might miss other significant aspects like context, audience, or the socio-political environment of the time of revelation. The Qur'an's teachings should be accessible without needing to decode an intricate structural puzzle. Moderator, let's shift focus a bit. How does the debate on structure impact the practice of Islam, if at all? Dr. Hassan Alami. The structure of the Qur'an deeply influences Islamic practice and spirituality. For instance, the arrangement of verses and chapters in prayer or during recitation during Ramadan reflects this coherence, enhancing the spiritual experience. Knowing the structure can make the Qur'an's recitation and memorization more meaningful, connecting the believer with the divine message in a profound way. Professor Jane Smith. I would argue that for most Muslims, the structural debate is largely academic. The spiritual, moral and communal aspects of Islam are derived more from the content of the Quran than from its arrangement. However, understanding the debate can enrich one's appreciation of the text, offering new perspectives on familiar verses. Moderator. Let's consider a point raised earlier about Western scholarship. Dr. Alami, how do you respond to criticisms from Western scholars regarding the Quran's literary structure? Dr. Hassan Alami. Many Western criticisms stem from a lack of understanding or appreciation of Arabic literary forms or the oral tradition of the Quran. The text was meant to be heard, not just read, which changes the perception of its structure. Modern scholars who engage deeply with Arabic literature, like Angelica Neuwirth or Mustansir Mir, have come to appreciate the Quran's structural beauty. Moderator. Professor Smith, does the Western scholarly approach need to evolve to better understand the Quran's structure? Professor Jane Smith. Certainly there's room for evolution in approach. Western scholarship should perhaps focus more on the cultural and linguistic context in which the Quran was revealed. However, it's also crucial to maintain critical analysis without automatically assuming divine coherence where none might be apparent to those outside the faith. Moderator, we're almost out of time. Let's close with a question on future research. What areas do you see as critical for future exploration in this debate? Dr. Hassan Alami. Future research should continue to explore the intersections of linguistic analysis, literary theory, and theological insights. There's much to learn from integrating digital humanities tools for pattern recognition in the Quran's text, which could further illuminate its structural sophistication. Professor Jane Smith. I would advocate for comparative studies between the Quran and other religious or literary texts regarding structure, to see if similar patterns exist elsewhere. This could provide a broader context for understanding what's unique to the Quran versus what might be a commonality in sacred texts. Moderator, thank you both for an enlightening discussion. It's clear that the debate on the Quran structure is not just about text, but touches on faith, culture, and the very nature of interpretation. To wrap up, let's consider Dr. Alami, how might this ongoing discussion influence Islamic education or the teaching of the Quran? Dr. Hassan Alami. This discussion can significantly enrich Islamic education by integrating structural analysis into the curriculum, teaching students not only the meaning of verses, but also how they connect structurally, can deepen their understanding and appreciation of the Quran. This could lead to more nuanced interpretations in tafsir, Quranic exegesis classes, fostering a more comprehensive approach to religious study. Moderator. And Professor Smith, what's your view on how this debate might shape the way the Quran is taught or understood in non-Islamic academic settings? Professor Jane Smith. In academic settings, particularly those outside of religious institutions, this debate can encourage a more critical and comparative approach to religious texts. It would be beneficial to teach students to appreciate the Quran's structure while also acknowledging the diversity of scholarly interpretations. This could lead to a more respectful and informed dialogue about Islam in broader educational contexts. Moderator, let's talk about the influence of technology. Dr. Alami, how do you see digital tools playing a role in this debate? Dr. Hassan Alami, digital tools are invaluable in this area. Software for text analysis can help visualize patterns and connections that might not be immediately obvious. Tools like digital concordances or programs that analyze literary symmetry can open new avenues for research, making it easier to demonstrate structural coherence in ways that were previously time-consuming or impossible. Moderator. Professor Smith, what are your thoughts on the impact of technology on this scholarly debate? Professor Jane Smith, technology indeed offers new lenses through which to view the Quran's text. However, it's essential to use these tools with caution, ensuring they don't lead to oversimplification or the imposition of patterns where none exist. The human element of interpretation, with its cultural and historical nuances, must remain central to the study. Moderator. We've discussed coherence, but let's consider the opposite side. Dr. Alami, can there be value in recognizing the Quran's diversity in revelation context? Dr. Hassan Alami, absolutely. Recognizing the diverse context of revelation doesn't undermine coherence. Rather, it enriches our understanding of the Qur'an's adaptability and relevance to different situations. This diversity shows the text's capacity to address a wide array of human conditions, making it both universally applicable and uniquely tailored to specific historical moments. Moderator, Professor Smith, how might understanding the Qur'an's diversity in context benefit its study? Professor Jane Smith, it's crucial for understanding the Qur'an's evolution as a living text. By acknowledging the context, we can better interpret how certain verses might have been meant for specific circumstances, which in turn can guide contemporary application of its teachings. This approach respects the Qur'an's historical depth while allowing for modern interpretation. Moderator, as we conclude, what final message would you both like to leave with our audience about the importance of this debate? Dr. Hassan Alami. This debate should be seen as an invitation to a deeper, more respectful engagement with the Qur'an. Understanding its structure is not just an academic exercise, but a spiritual journey that can bring one closer to the divine message. Professor Jane Smith. The debate underscores the richness of the Qur'an as a text worthy of endless study. It teaches us that multiple perspectives can coexist, each contributing to a fuller appreciation of this sacred scripture, whether you're a believer or a scholar. Moderator. Thank you, Dr. Alami and Professor Smith, for your insightful contributions. This debate has shown us the complexity of interpreting sacred texts and the value in exploring their structure from various viewpoints. Let's consider one more aspect, the implications of this debate for interfaith dialogue. Dr. Alami, how does this discussion on Quranic structure contribute to interfaith understanding? Dr. Hassan Alami. The discussion about the Quran's structure can serve as a bridge for interfaith dialogue. By explaining the coherence we perceive, we invite others to appreciate the Quran not just as a religious text, but as a literary masterpiece with universal themes. This can lead to deeper mutual respect and understanding, particularly when we compare structural elements with those found in sacred texts of other religions. Moderator. Professor Smith, from your perspective, how might this debate foster or challenge interfaith relations? Professor Jane Smith. This debate can both challenge and foster interfaith relations. It challenges because it might highlight areas of disagreement on the nature of sacred texts. However, it fosters understanding by showing that each faith community has its unique approach to its scriptures, which can be a point of common ground in appreciating the diversity of religious expression. It's an opportunity to discuss how structure can influence belief, practice, and community life across religions. Moderator. A final question for both of you regarding the future of Quranic studies. What do you predict or hope for in terms of new methodologies or approaches? Dr. Hassan Alami, I predict a continued integration of interdisciplinary approaches, combining traditional exegesis with modern linguistic and literary theories, as well as computational analysis. There's also a growing interest in the global Muslim community's varied interpretations and practices, which will enrich our understanding of the Quran's structure and application in different cultural contexts. Professor Jane Smith. I hope for a more inclusive methodology that doesn't just look at the text from within the Islamic tradition, but also through lenses like feminist critique, post-colonial theory, and digital humanities. This would open up new dialogues about the Quran's relevance in contemporary society, addressing issues like gender, justice, and environmental ethics from within its own text. Moderator. Thank you for those insightful predictions. To wrap up, could each of you share a personal reflection on what this debate means to you on a personal level? Dr. Hassan Ali. On a personal level, this debate is a journey back to the essence of my faith. Understanding the Quran's structure is like uncovering layers of divine wisdom, making my spiritual practice more profound and my connection to the text more intimate. Professor Jane Smith. For me, this debate is a testament to the complexity and beauty of human thought and faith. As a scholar, it's a constant reminder of how much there is to learn and how dialogue can expand our horizons, whether we are believers or not. It's about appreciating the depth of human engagement with the sacred. Moderator, thank you, Dr. Alami and Professor Smith, for this enriching conversation. It's clear that the debate over the Qur'an's structure is not just academic, but touches on deep questions of faith, culture, and human understanding. This has been an enlightening discussion, and I hope it continues to inspire respect, curiosity, and dialogue across different communities. I want to touch on one more aspect, the emotional and spiritual resonance of this debate. Dr. Alami, how do you feel the debate on structure affects the spiritual experience of engaging with the Quran? Dr. Hassan Alami, the debate brings a sense of wonder and reverence. When you perceive the Quran not just as a series of verses, but as a beautifully structured symphony of divine wisdom, it intensifies the spiritual experience. It's like realizing that each note in a piece of music was placed with intention, enhancing the overall melody of life's guidance. Moderator? And Professor Smith, from your perspective, what emotional or spiritual impact does this debate have on those who might not share the same faith? Professor Jane Smith, for those outside the faith, this debate can evoke a sense of awe for the depth of religious texts. It opens up an appreciation for the dedication and intellect applied by believers in their quest to understand their scripture. It's also an invitation to reflect on one's own spiritual or philosophical inquiries, seeing parallels or contrast with other sacred traditions. Moderator, let's consider the implications for community and identity. Dr. Alami, how does the discussion of Quranic structure influence Muslim community identity? Dr. Hassan Alami, it strengthens our collective identity. When Muslims discuss and learn about the coherence of the Quran, it's not just an intellectual exercise, but a communal one reinforcing our shared heritage and the belief in the Quran's divine origin. It's a reminder of our unity and diversity as different interpretations coexist under the umbrella of belief in one text. Moderator, Professor Smith, how might this debate affect perceptions of Islam in wider society? Professor Jane Smith, it can significantly alter perceptions by showcasing the intellectual rigor within Islam. When people see that this debate involves centuries of scholarship, it contradicts stereotypes of Islam being a monolithic or anti-intellectual faith. It can foster respect and curiosity about Islam's rich tradition of textual analysis and interpretation. Moderator, we've spoken much about scholars and academics, but how does this debate resonate with everyday believers? Dr. Alami, Dr. Hassan Alami. For everyday believers, this debate can be both affirming and educational. It affirms the beauty and complexity of our scripture, encouraging a deeper engagement with the Quran. It educates by showing that faith involves questioning and seeking understanding, not just accepting. Moderator, and Professor Smith, what about for those who observe from outside the faith? Professor Jane Smith, it provides a window into the living nature of religious texts. Observers see that the Quran isn't just a static book, but a dynamic text that continues to be explored and lived. This can foster empathy and understanding, showing that religious engagement is an active, thoughtful process. Moderator, as we conclude, I'd like each of you to share a thought on how this debate might evolve in the future. Dr. Hassan Alami, I envision this debate evolving with greater integration of global Muslim voices, perhaps leading to new methodologies that blend traditional Islamic scholarship with modern scientific approaches, thereby deepening our collective understanding of the Quran. Professor Jane Smith, I foresee a future where this debate becomes more interdisciplinary and inclusive, perhaps leading to a synthesis of Eastern and Western scholarly traditions. This could result in a richer, more nuanced global conversation about sacred texts, where structure and content are seen as inseparable aspects of divine communication. Moderator, thank you both for your insights and for sharing such a profound discussion. Tonight has shown us that debates about sacred texts are not just about words on a page, but about the living, breathing spirit of faith and inquiry. To conclude, tonight's discussion has been a deep dive into the structure of the Quran, touching on its theological, cultural, and scholarly implications. We've seen how this debate transcends mere academic interest to impact spiritual life, community identity, and interfaith dialogue. Dr. Hassan Alami, I appreciate this opportunity to share how the structure of the Quran can enrich our faith and understanding, reminding us of the divine wisdom we engage with daily. Professor Jane Smith, and I thank you for allowing this exploration from a broader scholarly perspective. highlighting how such debates can foster mutual respect and learning across different traditions. Moderator, from this discussion, we've learned that questioning and exploring the structure of sacred texts like the Qur'an can lead to greater appreciation, understanding and connection, not only within one's own faith, but also across different beliefs. It's clear that these dialogues are vital for both personal growth and communal harmony. Dr. Hassan Alami. May this debate continue to inspire Muslims and non-Muslims alike to delve deeper into the beauty and complexity of religious texts. Professor Jane Smith. And may it encourage all of us to approach sacred literature with an open mind, recognizing the value in diverse interpretations and the shared human quest for meaning. Moderator. Thank you, Dr. Alami and Professor Smith, for your enlightening contributions. This debate has not only been about the structure of the Quran, but about the structure of our dialogues, our communities, and our understanding of each other. Good night, and may we all continue to learn and grow from these discussions. The Quranic ring structure refers to a literary technique where the text is organized in a symmetrical or circular fashion, with thematic or structural elements mirroring each other from the beginning to the end of a passage, chapter, or even the entire text. Here's a detailed look at this concept. Definition and characteristics. Symmetry. In ring composition, the structure often follows a pattern where elements are symmetrically arranged. For instance, if you have a sequence like A, B, C, D, the structure might mirror back to A prime, B, C, D, where A corresponds to A, B to B, and so on. Central theme. The middle of the ring often contains the most crucial message or theme of the passage, emphasizing it as the focal point of the text. This is in line with the phrase, "the meaning is in the middle," attributed to Mary Douglas, who has extensively studied ring composition. Closure. The beginning and end of the text often echo each other, providing a sense of closure and unity. This could be through the repetition of key phrases, words, or themes. Application in the Quran. Surah analysis. Specific chapters, surahs of the Quran, are analyzed for their ring structures. For example, Surah Yusuf, Q12. Scholars like Jawad Qureshi have argued that this chapter displays intricate mirroring, concentric composition, and parallelism, highlighting themes like betrayal, exile, and reconciliation centered around the story of Joseph. Surah Al-Fatiha. Raymond Farrin suggests that this opening chapter forms a chiastic or ring structure, where the relationship between worshipper and God is mirrored in its verses. Thematic coherence. The ring structure isn't just about form, it's about enhancing the thematic unity. For example, in Surah Al-Baqarah, the longest chapter, there's a proposed concentric ring composition where the middle verses focus on pivotal themes like divine law and human responsibility. Scholarly insights. Michel Kuipers. He has explored how symmetry in the Quran manifests through parallelism, chiasm, and concentrism, with concentrism being particularly prevalent. Mary Douglas. Her work on thinking in circles has been influential in understanding how ring composition functions in religious texts, providing a framework to analyze the Quran's structure. Modern scholars like Neil Robinson, Mustansir Mir, and Angelica Neuwirth have contributed to this field by examining how these structures might influence interpretation and appreciation of the Quranic text. Cultural and spiritual impact. Spiritual experience. For many Muslims, recognizing the ring structure can deepen the spiritual experience of recitation and study, highlighting the interconnectedness and divinity of the text. Debate on coherence. The ring structure supports arguments for the Quran's coherence, countering historical critiques of its supposed disjointedness by showing a sophisticated literary arrangement. Conclusion. The Quranic ring structure is seen as evidence of a deliberate and profound literary design, suggesting that the text was composed with an intricate plan to convey its messages effectively. While it has sparked debate and scholarly interest, it also serves as a testament to the Quran's literary artistry and its capacity to engage believers on multiple levels, from the aesthetic to the theological. Surah Yusuf, chapter 12 of the Quran, is renowned for its narrative coherence and literary artistry, particularly through the use of ring composition or concentric structure. Here's an analysis highlighting how these elements contribute to the chapter's thematic depth. Overview. Theme. The primary theme of Surah Yusuf revolves around the story of Prophet Joseph, Yusuf, focusing on themes of patience, divine providence, forgiveness, and the ultimate triumph of good over evil. Structure. Scholars like Jawad Qureshi and Michel Kuipers have pointed out that Surah Yusuf is an exemplary case of ring composition, where the narrative and thematic elements are symmetrically arranged. Structural analysis. Introduction. A. The surah begins with an introduction, verses 1-3, stating that the Qur'an is a clear book meant to guide humanity, explicitly mentioning the story of Joseph as one of the best narratives. Joseph's dream and betrayal. B. Joseph shares his dream with his family, v.4-5, leading to envy and his subsequent betrayal by his brothers, v.6-20. Joseph in Egypt. C. His journey to Egypt, being sold into slavery, and his initial trials, v.2-1-36. Zuleika's attempt. D. The temptation by Zuleika and Joseph's response, v.37-52, which leads to his imprisonment. Interpretation of dreams in prison. E. Joseph interprets the dreams of his fellow prisoners, v.53-57, which is the central event of the narrative. Joseph's release and rise. D. His release from prison, his rise to power, and the vindication of his innocence, v.58-92. Reunion with family. C. The brothers come to Egypt for food, eventually leading to Joseph revealing himself to his family, forgiving them, and reuniting, v.93-101. Joseph's parents in Egypt. B. The arrival of Joseph's parents, the fulfillment of his childhood dream, v.102-110. Conclusion. A. The surah concludes by drawing lessons from the story, emphasizing the divine guidance and the moral of the tale, v.111. Key aspects. Symmetry and mirroring. Each section mirrors another, with themes and events reflecting back on each other, creating a narrative loop that emphasizes key points like patience, trust in God, and forgiveness. Central message. The middle segment, E, where Joseph interprets dreams in prison, is pivotal. It underscores his prophetic wisdom and the turning point of his life, leading to his eventual release and rise to power. Thematic unity. The concentric structure brings out the unity of themes, divine plan. From the beginning, Joseph's dream, to the end, the dream's fulfillment, the surah illustrates how everything unfolds according to divine will. Moral lessons, patience, the dangers of jealousy, the virtue of forgiveness, and the ultimate justice of God are woven throughout the narrative. Literary beauty. The story is told with vivid imagery and emotional depth, engaging listeners or readers in the trials and triumphs of Joseph. Scholarly perspectives. Jawad Qureshi suggests that the concentric composition of Surah Yusuf emphasizes the central message of divine providence, where every event, even those perceived as negative, serves a higher purpose. Michel Kuipers highlights how the structure, especially through chiasmus, aids in understanding the moral and spiritual lessons, with the center of the ring focusing on divine wisdom and justice. Spiritual and cultural impact, moral guidance. The surah serves as a moral compass for Muslims, offering lessons on patience, trust in God, forgiveness, and the eventual triumph of truth. Recitation and reflection. Its narrative flow and literary structure make it one of the most recited and studied chapters in Islamic practice, especially during Ramadan. Surah Yusuf's analysis through the lens of ring composition not only showcases its narrative beauty, but also deepens the understanding of its theological and moral messages, making it a profound piece of religious literature. The life of Prophet Joseph, Yusuf in Arabic, as depicted in Islamic tradition, is one of the most detailed and compelling narratives in the Qur'an, particularly in Surah Yusuf, chapter 12. Here's an overview of his life and the significant events. Early life, dream of stardom. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob Yaqub, a prophet in Islam. At a young age, he dreamt that 11 stars, the sun and the moon were bowing to him, which he shared with his family. This dream was interpreted as a prophecy that he would one day be in a position of great authority. Jealousy and betrayal. His brothers, envious of their father's love for Joseph and his dreams, conspired against him. They threw him into a well and told their father he was killed by a wolf. Journey to Egypt, sold into slavery. Joseph was rescued from the well by a passing caravan and sold into slavery in Egypt to Potiphar, known in Islamic tradition as Al-Aziz, a high-ranking official. Trials in Egypt, service in Al-Aziz's house. Joseph grew up in Al-Aziz's household, blessed with beauty, wisdom and integrity. He was placed in charge of the household affairs. The attempt of Zuleika, Al-Aziz's wife, identified in Islamic tradition as Zuleika, attempted to seduce Joseph. When he resisted, she accused him of trying to seduce her. Despite this, Joseph was imprisoned rather than executed due to the intervention of a witness and Al-Aziz's doubts about the accusation. Imprisonment, dream interpretation. While in prison, Joseph became known for interpreting dreams. He correctly interpreted the dreams of two fellow prisoners, one of whom was eventually released and became a servant to the king. Rise to power, interpreting the king's dream. Upon the king having a troubling dream, Joseph's former cellmate, now a servant, recommended him. Joseph interpreted the dream to predict 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine, advising the king to store grain. Appointment as vizier. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom and integrity, the king released him from prison and appointed him as the vizier, or governor of Egypt, responsible for managing the country's resources during these predicted times. Family reconciliation, famine and family. During the famine, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt for grain, not recognizing him. After several encounters designed to test their character, Joseph finally revealed himself. He forgave them, invited his family to Egypt, and was reunited with his father Jacob and the rest of his family. Later life. Legacy. Joseph's life is remembered for his patience, faith, and wisdom. He managed Egypt's resources during the famine, ensuring the survival of his family and many others. His story is often cited in Islamic teachings as an example of how faith, patience, and righteousness can lead to divine favor and success. Moral and spiritual lessons, patience and trust in God. Joseph's life epitomizes patience through numerous trials, showing that steadfast faith can lead to divine providence. Forgiveness. His forgiving nature towards his brothers after their betrayal is a profound lesson in forgiveness and mercy. The power of truth. Joseph's honesty and integrity, even in the face of adversity, ultimately led to his vindication and elevation in status. Divine plan. His story illustrates that events in life, no matter how challenging, are part of a larger divine plan aimed at the ultimate good. Joseph's narrative is not only a historical account, but also serves as a rich source of moral and spiritual guidance in Islamic tradition, illustrating the virtues of patience, trust, and forgiveness. Prophet Joseph's dreams play a pivotal role in his narrative, both as a foretelling of his future and as a mechanism for his rise to power. Here's a detailed look at the dreams in Joseph's life. The dream of 11 stars, the sun and the moon. Content. When Joseph was still a young boy, he dreamt that he saw 11 stars along with the sun and the moon bowing down to him. Interpretation. Joseph shared this dream with his father, Jacob, who understood it to mean that Joseph would one day be a figure of great authority to which his family would submit. Jacob advised Joseph not to tell his brothers about this dream to avoid further jealousy. Symbolism. 11 stars represented his 11 brothers. Sun and moon symbolized his parents, Jacob and Rachel, though some interpretations might vary regarding which parent the moon represents, considering Rachel had passed away by this time in some accounts. Outcome. This dream was fulfilled when Joseph, as the vizier of Egypt, was reunited with his family, and they all bowed to him, not knowing his identity at first during the famine. Dreams in prison. Dream of the two prisoners. While in prison, Joseph was approached by two fellow prisoners to interpret their dreams. The wine server's dream. He dreamt of pressing grapes into wine for his lord. Joseph interpreted this as him being freed and serving wine to his master again. The baker's dream. He dreamt of carrying bread on his head from which birds were eating. Joseph interpreted this as a sign that he would be crucified and that birds would eat from his head. Outcome? The interpretations came true, the wine server was released, and the baker was executed. However, the wine server forgot to mention Joseph to the king immediately upon his release, which led to Joseph spending more time in prison. The king's dream. Content. The king of Egypt dreamt of 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 lean cows, followed by another dream of 7 green ears of corn and 7 dry ones. Interpretation. When the wine server finally remembered Joseph and told the king about him, Joseph was summoned. He interpreted the dream to predict 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine, advising the king to store grain during the good years to survive the famine. Outcome? His interpretation not only saved Egypt from the impending famine, but also led to his release from prison and his appointment as vizier, giving him the authority to manage the country's resources. Significance of the dreams, divine guidance. Joseph's ability to interpret dreams is seen as a divine gift, illustrating how God communicates through dreams to guide or warn individuals. Fulfillment of prophecy. The dreams serve as a narrative device to show the fulfillment of divine prophecy, reinforcing the theme of God's plan and providence. Moral and leadership qualities. The dreams highlight Joseph's wisdom, patience, and integrity, qualities that were crucial for his rise to power and his eventual reconciliation with his family. Test of character. The dreams also test the characters involved. Joseph's brother's reaction to his first dream sets the stage for his trials, while his interpretation of the king's dream tests and then proves his capability in leadership. Joseph's dreams are central to his story, serving not only as plot devices but also as profound symbols of divine intervention, moral guidance, and the unfolding of God's plan in human life. Surah Yusuf, chapter 12 of the Qur'an, is often analysed for its exemplary use of ring composition or concentric structure. Here's a summary of its ring structure. Ring structure of Surah Yusuf, A. Introduction. V1, 3. Clear book. Emphasizes the Quran as a book meant to guide humanity, introducing the story of Joseph as one of the best narratives. B. Joseph's dream and betrayal. V4, 20. Dream. Joseph shares his dream, leading to jealousy. Betrayal. His brothers plot against him, throw him into a well. See Joseph in Egypt, VA 21:36. Slavery. Joseph is sold into slavery in Egypt. Initial trials, his early experiences in the house of Al-Aziz, D. Zuleika's attempt, V 37:52. Seduction. Zuleika attempts to seduce Joseph. Accusation. He is falsely accused but imprisoned rather than punished. E. Interpretation of dreams in prison, V 53:57. Central event. Joseph interprets the dreams of his fellow prisoners, predicting their fates. This is the thematic and structural center of the surah, highlighting divine wisdom and providence. Down Joseph's release and rise, V58:92. Vindication. Joseph's innocence is proven through dream interpretation. Rise to power. He is released and appointed as vizier. C. Reunion with family, V93:101. Brothers in Egypt. The brothers come for food during the famine. Reconciliation. Joseph reveals himself, forgives his brothers, and reunites with his family. Were Joseph's parents in Egypt, V 102:110. Fulfillment of dream. His family bows to him, fulfilling his childhood dream. Family reunion. His parents and siblings are settled in Egypt. A. Conclusion, V 111. Moral lessons reflects on the story's lessons, emphasizing divine guidance and the moral message. Key points of the structure. Symmetry. Each segment mirrors another, with themes and events reflecting back on each other, creating a cohesive narrative loop. Central theme. The middle, E, emphasizes Joseph's prophetic wisdom, divine intervention, and the turning point in his life. Thematic unity. The structure underscores themes like patience, divine providence, forgiveness, and the triumph of righteousness. Moral and spiritual lessons. By structuring the narrative in this way, the surah provides a profound lesson in how every event, no matter how seemingly adverse, fits into a divine plan. This ring structure not only showcases the literary artistry of the Quran, but also deepens the understanding of its theological and moral teachings through the life of Joseph. Ring composition or concentric structure is a literary technique where the text is organized in a symmetrical or circular manner. In the context of the Quran, this method is used to enhance thematic unity, emphasize central messages, and provide a structured narrative flow. Here's an overview of how ring composition manifests in the Quran. Concept and characteristics. Symmetry. The structure often follows a pattern where elements at the beginning of a passage, chapter, or section correspond to elements at the end, with the middle section typically holding the most significant or pivotal message. Central emphasis. The center of the ring composition often contains the core message or theme, which is highlighted by its position as the focal point. Closure. The beginning and end often echo each other, creating a sense of closure and reinforcing the unity of the text. Examples of ring composition in the Quran: Surah Yusuf, chapter 12. Structure. As previously detailed, this surah is a classic example where the life story of Joseph is told with symmetry. The narrative begins and ends with themes of prophecy and divine providence, with Joseph's dream interpretation in prison at the center. Surah Al-Fatiha, chapter 1. Structure. Even this brief opening chapter has been analyzed for ring composition. The structure might look like this: A. Praise of Allah, V1, 3b. Worship and help sought from Allah, V4, 5. C. Guidance sought, V6b. Guidance as the path of those blessed, V7aa. Exclusion of the path of the misguided, V7b. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2. Complex structure. This longest chapter shows signs of a larger concentric structure where themes like the creation of mankind, divine commandments, and the story of the children of Israel are mirrored from beginning to end, with pivotal verses in the middle focusing on key Islamic practices and beliefs. Scholarly perspectives. Michel Kuipers. His work has extensively explored how the Quran uses symmetry in the forms of parallelism, chiasm, and concentrism. He argues that concentrism, where there's a central element surrounded by symmetrically arranged sections, is the most common in the Quran. Mary Douglas. Her insights from thinking in circles have been applied to Quranic studies, suggesting that ring composition in religious texts serves to emphasize the central message, providing both structure and interpretive guidance. Modern scholars like Neil Robinson, Mustansir Mir, and Angelica Neuwirth, have discussed how these structures might affect the interpretation and understanding of the Quranic text, showing that the Quran was not just revealed, but also arranged with literary sophistication. Application and impact. Thematic coherence. Ring composition aids in understanding the Quran's thematic unity, showing how different narratives or verses connect under overarching themes. Spiritual depth. For believers, recognizing this structure can enhance the spiritual experience of recitation and study by highlighting the depth and interconnectedness of Quranic verses. Debate on structure. It has been a significant point in debates about the Quran's coherence, with proponents arguing that such structures evidence deliberate divine composition. Educational tool. In Islamic education, understanding ring composition can help in teaching the Quran, making its lessons more accessible and engaging through the recognition of literary patterns. Conclusion. Ring composition in the Quran is a testament to its literary artistry, providing a framework that not only organizes the text but also enriches its interpretation, making the Quran a multi-dimensional text that invites continual exploration and understanding. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2 of the Quran, is the longest chapter in the Quran with 286 verses. Its structure is complex and has been analyzed for elements of ring composition, thematic coherence, and narrative flow. Here's a summary of its structure. General overview. Themes includes the creation of Adam, laws and commandments, stories of prophets like Abraham, Moses and Jesus, the children of Israel, prayer, fasting, charity, pilgrimage, and numerous legal rulings. Structure. Scholars suggest that Al-Baqarah might follow a concentric or ring structure, where the beginning and end of the surah address similar themes with a central pivotal section. Proposed ring composition, Introduction and Praise of God, V1, 20, starts with the description of the Quran as a guidance for the God-conscious, warnings and the nature of disbelief. Creation of humanity, Adam and the Covenant, via 21:39, discusses the creation of Adam, the fall of Iblis, Satan, and the covenant with the children of Israel. Laws and regulations, V40, 176. Here, numerous legal injunctions are laid out, including dietary laws, rules of prayer, fasting, charity, and the pilgrimage. This section also includes stories related to the children of Israel and their transgressions. The central section, V177-253. This part is sometimes considered the core or pivot of the surah. Piety, V177, defines true piety not just in rituals but in broader ethical behavior. Geeser's Retaliation and Wills, v. 178, 182, legal rulings on retaliation and the importance of wills. Fasting, v. 183, 187, detailed laws on fasting during Ramadan. Pilgrimage, v. 189, 196, rules regarding Hajj. Fighting in the cause of Allah, v. 190, 195, discusses when and how to engage in combat. Charity, v. 196, 219, emphasizes the importance of giving and spending in the way of Allah. Divine signs in the story of Abraham, v. 255, 253, includes Ayat al-Kursi, verse of the throne, and stories of Abraham testing faith. See Laws and Regulations, v. 254, 274, continues with legal aspects focusing on charity, usury, and the prohibition of interest. B.O. Stories of Prophets and the Covenant, v. 255, 283, includes further narratives about prophets, David, Solomon, and Jesus, reinforcing themes of divine promise, covenant, and human responsibility. A. Ends with the call to faith and prayer for Surah Al-Baqarah's structure exemplifies how the Qur'an can be both a guide for daily life and a profound piece of literature, where every part contributes to a larger, unified message. Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3 of the Qur'an, follows Surah Al-Baqarah and is named after the family of Imran, which includes Mary, the mother of Jesus. This surah is also rich in themes, history and legal guidance, although it's shorter with 200 verses. Here's an overview of its structure, with some scholars suggesting elements of ring composition or thematic coherence. General overview: themes includes the unity of God, the story of Mary and Jesus, doctrinal points distinguishing Islam from other Abrahamic faiths, admonitions to the children of Israel, guidance on faith, and the inevitability of divine victory for the believers. Structure: while not as explicitly detailed in ring composition as some other surahs, Al-Imran can still be seen to have a thematic structure with a central focus. Proposed thematic structure: Introduction, the Book and God's Oneness, v19, begins with the assertion of the Quran as a truth from God and the affirmation of His oneness. Lessons from Previous Nations and the Battle of Badr, v10, 41, discusses the fate of those who disbelieved in the past, introduces the concept of divine support for believers, and recounts the victory at Badr to illustrate God's help. The family of Imran and the story of Mary and Jesus, v33, 63, focuses on the family of Imran, the miraculous birth of Mary, and her son Jesus, emphasizing his prophetic role and the monotheistic message he conveyed. Central themes: faith, hypocrisy, and divine support, v64, 120. This section can be seen as central because it invites to a common ground with other monotheists, v64, warns against hypocrisy and discusses the consequences of disbelief, v69, 77, details the Battle of Uhud, showing the trials of faith and divine aid in adversity, v121, 171, c. the prophets and divine signs, v121, 180. Continues with lessons from prophets and divine intervention, focusing on the steadfastness required in faith and the rewards thereof. Ba, Admonitions and Divine Promises, v. 181-195, provides more warnings against the love of money, the transient nature of worldly life, and the eternal nature of the hereafter. A. Conclusion, Praise of God, Faith and Supplication, v. 196-200, ends with reflections on God's creation, the consequences of disbelief, and a call to faith and remembrance of God, mirroring the introduction with its focus on divine unity and the purpose of the Qur'an. Key structural elements. Thematic symmetry. While not a perfect mirror, the beginning and end focus on the nature of faith, divine unity, and the purpose of revelation, creating a thematic loop. Central message. The middle parts emphasize the core messages of Islam, the oneness of God, the prophethood of Muhammad, Jesus, and others, and the trials and victories of faith. Narrative and legal guidance. Al-Imran intertwines historical narratives with legal and moral guidance, showing how past events relate to the Islamic community's spiritual and practical life. Unity of message. The structure helps in highlighting the continuity and unity of the divine message across time and prophets, reinforcing the Qur'an's claim as the final revelation. Scholastic insights. Scholars like Mustansir Mir and others have noted how such structures in the Qur'an serve not only to tell a story or convey laws, but also to build a theological argument for the oneness of God and the consistency of divine guidance through prophets. The surah's structure reflects its purpose in providing comfort, guidance, and a call to unity among believers amidst the challenges of early Islamic history. While Al-Imran might not exhibit the explicit ring composition seen in Surah Yusuf, its thematic arrangement presents a coherent message that resonates with the overarching themes of the Qur'an, emphasizing faith, divine support, and the continuity of prophecy. Surah Al-Nisa, chapter 4 of the Qur'an, is named after the women and deals extensively with social, familial, and legal issues, particularly regarding women, orphans, and inheritance. With 176 verses, it's a crucial chapter for understanding Islamic law and ethics. Here's an overview of its structure. General overview. Themes includes laws on marriage, divorce, inheritance, guardianship of orphans, treatment of women, the prohibition of usury, rules of conduct in war, and the condemnation of hypocrisy. Structure. While not as commonly discussed in terms of ring composition, Al-Nisa's structure can be analyzed for thematic coherence and progression. Proposed structural outline, introduction, rights and obligations, v1:14, begins with the command to fear Allah concerning the weak, particularly orphans and women, setting the tone for the surah's focus on justice and protection. Inheritance law and marriage regulations, v15:34. Detailed laws on inheritance distribution, emphasizing fairness and protection for women and orphans. Also includes marriage and divorce laws, highlighting the rights of women. Social and moral conduct, v35:65, discusses arbitration in family disputes, the prohibition against marrying polytheistic women unless they convert, rules on adultery, and the general ethics of social interaction. Central doctrine and historical lessons, v66:147. This section might be considered central due to obedience to God and His Messenger, v66:83. Stress on following divine guidance. Warnings against hypocrisy, v84:147. Detailed discussion on the signs and consequences of hypocrisy with historical narratives to illustrate these points. C. Further legal and ethical guidance, v148:162, continues with the theme of social conduct, focusing on prayer, charity and admonitions against slander and false accusations. B.A. Laws of war, peace and social justice, v163:173, addresses rules for engaging in combat, the treatment of prisoners, and the importance of justice, mirroring the earlier focus on legal aspects but in the context of broader community interactions. A. Conclusion, unity of faith and final admonition, v174:176, concludes with a call to the people of the book to believe in the Qur'an, emphasizing monotheism and the finality of Muhammad's prophethood, echoing the initial theme of rights and obligations through the lens of faith. Key structural elements, thematic progression from personal laws concerning family and inheritance to broader societal and ethical issues. The surah covers a spectrum of human conduct. Central emphasis. The middle section focuses on the core tenets of Islam, like obedience to God and His Messenger, and the dangers of hypocrisy, which are pivotal to Muslim life and community. Moral and legal codes. Al-Nisa provides foundational guidance for Muslims on how to manage personal, familial, and communal affairs. Unity of life. Diverse topic with a clear thread of justice, protection of the vulnerable, and the cause of life. Scholastic insight. While explicit brings on The structure reflects the Qur'an's method of addressing both immediate concerns of the early Muslim community and timeless moral and legal principles. Scholars like Neil Robinson have analysed how the Qur'an's structure, including in Al-Nisa, serves to reiterate and expand upon core Islamic values. Surah Al-Nisa's structure is designed to tackle intricate social issues with divine guidance, ensuring that believers understand their duties towards each other and towards God, thereby fostering a just and compassionate community. Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5 of the Qur'an, is named after the table spread and contains a variety of themes focusing on legal, moral, and religious life. Here are the prominent themes discussed in this surah: dietary laws and ritual purity, prohibited foods. The chapter begins with the prohibition of certain foods like carrion, blood, pork, and animals killed in the name of idols, v3, halal and haram. It clarifies what is lawful, halal, and what is forbidden, haram, including the method of slaughtering animals, covenants and oaths, fulfillment of contracts, emphasizes the importance of keeping promises and oaths, v1. Divine covenant discusses the covenant God made with the children of Israel and the consequences of breaking it, v12-13. Legal and ethical guidelines, justice and fairness, strong emphasis on justice even if it's against oneself, family or friends, v8. Inheritance and wills, clarification on inheritance laws, particularly in cases where there's no will, v106-108. Punishments for crimes, details regarding punishments for theft, v38. And the principle of retaliation and qisas in case of murder or injury, v45. Interfaith relations, people of the book, addresses relations with Jews and Christians, discussing the shared elements of faith and the points of divergence, v18, 51, 82. Food of the people of the book, permits Muslims to eat food prepared by Jews and Christians, v5. Prophethood and divine messages, Prophet Jesus, Isa, provides a narrative about Jesus, including his birth, miracles, and his role as a messenger, v75, 78, 110, 119. Muhammad as the final prophet, affirms Muhammad's prophethood and the Qur'an as the final revelation, v3. Religious practices, prayer and charity, reinforces the importance of prayer, salah, and almsgiving, zakat, v55. Hajj and Umrah, refers to the pilgrimage rites, but with less detail compared to other surahs. Warnings against hypocrisy and disbelief, hypocrites, discusses the characteristics and fate of hypocrites who claim faith but act contrary to it, v51-103. Disbelievers, warns against those who disbelieve after receiving clear signs, v115. The hereafter, Judgment Day, frequent reminders about the Day of Judgment, encouraging righteousness in anticipation of this final accountability, v36, 69, 119. Miracles and divine intervention, the table spread, the story of Jesus asking for a table spread from heaven as a sign for the children of Israel, this is 112, 115, which gives the surah its name. Unity and community. Ummah calls for unity among Muslims and the establishment of a just community. Historical narratives, stories of prophets, includes lessons from the lives of Adam, Moses and Jesus, linking their stories to the themes of obedience, guidance and divine support. Surah Al-Ma'idah provides a synthesis of legal rulings, ethical teachings and theological clarification, aiming to guide the Muslim community in both personal and communal life. It underlines the importance of adhering to Islamic law while promoting peace and justice in interfaith relations. Introduction. The subject of the Qur'an's structure has attracted inquiry and stirred debate for a very long time. Study of the holy book's form goes back at least as far as the Basran writer Al-Jahiz, d. 255, 868 or 869, who produced a work entitled The Composition of the Qur'an. And we are told that in the 4th century AH 10th century CE, a scholar named Abu Bakr al-Nisaburi would ask such questions as, why is this verse next to this other one? And what is the wisdom in the placement of this chapter next to this other one? He would fault the Baghdad learned men of his day for their disregard of this type of questioning. 1. A difference of opinion emerged on the question of the Qur'an's unity, and the subject became a matter for debate. Through subsequent centuries, numerous scholars produced additional works detailing the Qur'an's coherence, testifying to the fact that the case still needed to be made in these centuries and to the continued opposition to their thesis among some persons. The debate over structural integrity has continued into the modern period, during which it has intensified. During the classical era, the partisans of coherence went to great lengths to show the interconnection of the Qur'an. Basically, their method came to involve 3 elements: 1, 2, 3. They sought in this way to bring to light the concatenation of the Qur'an. This approach has more recently been described as linear atomistic, due to its focus on individual, successive verses rather than on chapters as thematic units. Lest we fault them for narrowness, however, we might recall with Jonathan Culler that the notion that the task of criticism is to reveal thematic unity is a post-romantic concept too. The group included such major figures of exegesis as Al-Razi, d. 606, 1209, Al-Qurtubi, d. 671, 1272, Nizam al-Din al-Nisaburi, d. 728, 1327, Abu Hayyan, d. 745, 1344, Al-Bikai, d. 885, 1480, and much later Al-Alusi, d. 1270, 1854, Ibn al-Zubayr, d. 708, 1308, and Al-Suyuti, d. 911, 1505, contributed smaller books focused solely on the concatenation of chapters. Their efforts bore fruit, most notably in the impressive multi-volume exegesis of Al-Bikai, The Arrangement of Pearls, an explanation of the interconnection of verses and chapters. Overall, their findings may be summarized in this statement by the Andalusi judge Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, d. 543, 1148. The verses of the Qur'an are joined together in such manner that they are like a single word, harmoniously associated structurally even. 3 skeptics from the classical era, on the other hand, did not record much in the way of argument or evidence. One supposes they made judgments based on their impressions and left the matter at that. Perhaps, though, this statement by Ibn Abd al-Salam, d. 661,260, commenting on the ways of those classical interpreters given to linking sequences of verses and chapters in relationships of meaning, may adequately summarize the skeptic's position. The science of correlations is a fine one. Yet, in order to demonstrate coherence, it must be applied to speech that is unified, whose beginning connects to its end. If it is applied to speech uttered for various reasons, it does not disclose unity, and whoever tries to join the parts thereof tasks himself with what he cannot do, except by means of tenuous links not found in good speech, to say nothing of the best. Verily, the Qur'an was revealed over a period of more than 20 years, gradually establishing and codifying different laws for various reasons, and what is revealed in this manner does not allow for the joining of all its parts. 4. We should note, though, that to the majority of Muslims who memorized and recited the Qur'an, this debate most likely seemed academic. The recited Qur'an is and has ever been the epitome of aesthetic as well as spiritual perfection for the faithful. Observe William A. Graham and Navid Kamani. And what these people knew and experienced as perfection, the Word of God, did not need to be explicated structurally. Still, we suppose that the large majority would have come down on the side of the partisans of coherence, considering the Qur'an to be totally unified. Samuel Taylor Coleridge said, "The sense of beauty subsists in simultaneous intuition of the relation of parts, each to each, and of all to a whole." 5. We suppose that this was the reaction of the majority upon listening to the Qur'an. Coming to the modern period, we find among intellectuals and Orientalists in the West quite a different reaction to the Qur'an. In 1764, Voltaire stated, "The Qur'an is a rhapsody without liaison, without order, without art. It is said, nevertheless, that this boring book is a very beautiful book." I am referring here to the Arabs, who pretend it is written with an elegance and a purity that no one has approached since. The Scotsman Thomas Carlyle in 1840 shared his opinion. "I must say it is as toilsome reading as I ever undertook. A wearisome, confused jumble, crude, incondite, endless iterations, long-windedness, entanglement, insupportable stupidity, in short." German scholars Theodor Noldecker and Friedrich Schwally later spoke of the Prophet Muhammad as being a mediocre stylist. Hartwig Hirschfeld found the Qur'an indescribably tedious. Richard Bell adverted to its dreary welter, and so on. In our century, F.E. Peters repeats the general impression of this group, saying, "There is much in the Qur'an to baffle the reader," and the work seems to have been only marginally affected by a literary sensibility. There has been some cutting and pasting, to be sure, and for reasons we cannot fathom, some very unliterary arrangements. 6. As Kamani has shown, an extremely sharp contrast can be made between the reaction of readers in this group and that of many people at hearing the Arabic Qur'an. He refers to the phenomenon of spontaneous conversion. 3 of the early examples will suffice for our purposes. The first is that of the one-time stout adversary of the Muslims, the man who would become the second caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, d. 23 644. "When I heard the Qur'an, my heart was softened and I wept, and Islam entered into me." Next, that of a poet from the Prophet's lifetime. "It was a gentle and soulful recital. It bewitched the heart and caressed the mind. Such an attraction was in the recitation that no man of poetry and letters could resist. In it he found a wave of tenderness and a spiritual wealth in its meaning, which he had never heard in human speech before." Last, that of another early convert, whose experience was explained by the Egyptian scholar Mustafa Sadiq al-Rafi, d. 1937. Every single part of his mind was touched by the pure sound of the language's music, and portion by portion, note by note, he embraced its harmony, the perfection of its pattern, its formal completion. It was not so much as if something was recited to him, but rather as if something had burned itself into him. 7. By way of clarification, we mention at this point that there are 2 different compositional orders relating to the Qur'an. The first is the revelatory order, the chronological sequence of verses and chapters vouchsafed to the Prophet over a period of 23 years, from 610 until 11632. The second is the completed order, since all the component parts of Scripture were arranged into a new final form once revelation was complete. The first order cannot be known precisely. The second is the Qur'an we have before us today. 8. We add, moreover, that it is this second arrangement, the existing Qur'an, that Western historical and philological scholars have found so objectionable, so disjointed. Note Carlyle. Read in its historical sequence, the Qur'an perhaps would not be so bad. Indeed, numerous translators, such as Rodwell in the 19th century, Bell and Blacher in the 20th, and Starkovsky in the 21st, have taken it upon themselves to rearrange the text, attempting to make it more logical for their respective audiences. This negative reaction to the Quran, by the way, parallels the reaction by most Western scholars during the same period to classical Arabic poetry. These latter scholars found the Arabic poems to be mainly incoherent. J.W. Redhouse, for instance, a contemporary of Rodwell, rearranged the lines of one of the major poetic works in the canon. 9. Meanwhile, in the 20th century, significant developments occurred in the study of the Quran. Exegetes began to approach individual chapters holistically, discussing them in terms of overall themes and general structure rather than concatenation. Important figures in this regard are Abd al-Hamid al-Farahi, d. 1930, and Amin Islahi, d. 1997, of India and Pakistan, Muhammad al-Tabatabai, d. 1981, of Iran, and Sayyid Qutb, d. 1966, of Egypt. Since the 1980s, numerous scholars in the field have followed their lead and have begun to show clearly that individual chapters, both short and long, are indeed characterized by a high degree of unity. Of these, one may single out for mention Angelica Neuwirth, Pierre Crapon de Caprona, Mustansir Mir, Muhammad Abdel Halim, Matthias Zanisser, Neil Robinson, Carl Ernst, and especially Michael Kuipers. This book develops out of the work of these various predecessors in the area of modern textual criticism. It affirms that the whole Quran, including all its arranged parts, possesses a magnificent design. First, however, before proceeding to a demonstration of this thesis in the subsequent chapters of our study, a brief discussion follows of the key structural principle existing in the Quran. As will become progressively evident, the whole Quran is arranged according to the law of symmetry. Michael Kuipers, drawing on the analysis by Roland Minette of biblical texts, has shown that symmetry manifests itself in the Quran in three ways. 1, 2, 3. The last of these forms, concentrism, is by far the most prevalent type of symmetry in the Quran. Incidentally, one notes that these symmetrical structures accommodate insertions and so are excellently suited, more so it would seem, than a straightforward linear structure, to revelation over time. For example, the arrangement ABCBA may be made to incorporate new elements, so that the final structure, for example, results in ABCDCBA. These three types of symmetry occur in individual chapters and render them cohesive and tightly structured. In addition, Amin Islahi has also argued that most chapters occur as pairs. He asserts that the majority of chapters form pairs with adjacent chapters, such that two chapters complement each other in some important way. In this manner, two independent wholes join together and form a new unit. Again, an example of symmetry. He also argues that pairs then combine to form chapter groups, and that the Quran as a whole is made up of numerous chapter groups. Lately, Kuipers has also highlighted the incidence of joined chapter pairs and of cohesive, symmetrically arranged chapter groups. 11I incorporate, and developed the work of both of these scholars in order to shed more light on the structure of the Quran. For example, I show that a concentric order inheres in chapter 2, the longest chapter, giving it unity. Likewise, I discuss chapter pairs and point out the existence of chapter groups, groups composed of chapter pairs and of certain individual chapters. Moreover, I show that these groups are in fact arranged in concentric order, such that 9 opening groups correspond with 9 closing groups, embedding a central group dealing with the hereafter. In addition, relating specifically to concentrism, this study benefits from the literary insights of Mary Douglas as expostulated in Thinking in Circles, an essay on ring composition, 2007. As Douglas indicates, the most prominent feature of a ring is the correspondence between the beginning and the end. The correspondence usually involves the repetition of a conspicuous word or phrase, such as a proper name. Also, there must be a clear thematic connection between the two sections. The correspondence serves to complete the circle and provide closure. In similar fashion, interior sections correspond to each other. The middle section of the ring then frequently accords with both the beginning and the end, a mark of strong cohesion and unity. On a smaller scale, the pattern may repeat itself as individual sections may themselves be composed of little rings. Furthermore, besides holding the text together, the form guides interpretation. Indeed, the effect of ring composition, according to Douglas, is to give special emphasis to the pivotal central point. By means of concentric patterning, ring composition calls attention to the center. We are drawn to look here for the essential message. As Douglas notes concisely, the meaning is in the middle. 12. Essentially, this book has two objectives. First, it seeks to refute, indeed to lay to rest, the long-standing criticism of disjointedness and to encourage in its place an increased appreciation for the organization of the Qur'an. Second, insofar as structure can serve to frame meaning, it aims to show how a better understanding of the Qur'an's structure may, in fact, aid in our interpretation of the text. Note on diagrams and structural summaries. Different typeface styles, bold, underline, and italic, are used to indicate relationships between corresponding elements. Bold is used especially to indicate a correspondence between beginning, middle, and end, while underline is generally used to indicate an interior correspondence. Italic is used less frequently to indicate a match between a particular element and another. The prime marker, occurring in the second half of a diagram or summary, indicates a correspondence with a previous section or part.